Hello, I'm Matt Willis, Public Health Officer for Marin County with a COVID-19 update for January 4th, 2021. This is the first update of the year and is a good chance to take stock of where we are and look at the next chapter of our response coming into the new year. I was recently asked to summarize 2020 in one word. The first three words that came into my head would have been bleeped out immediately, but I settled on the word resiliency. This word acknowledges that it's been an awful year for so many, with lost lives, lost livelihoods, with business closures, school closures, and canceled plans of all kinds. Since our first case in Marin 10 months ago, we've lost a resident almost every 3 days on average to COVID-19, and almost 8,000 of us have been infected. Resiliency is a strength. It's the capacity to recover. It's toughness and flexibility, and it's what's going to get us through the other side of this disaster. From the public health standpoint, I see one critical factor creating our resiliency, and that is our commitment to community itself. From a personal standpoint, the hardest decisions of this year have been around policies that have restricted individual freedoms in favor of community well-being. It turns out Bruce Springsteen summarizes this tension pretty well in his movie Western Stars. He describes what he calls our ongoing struggle between individual freedom and communal life. In his words, there are two sides of the American character. One is transient, restless, solitary, but the other is collective and communal, in search of family, deep roots, and a home for the heart to reside. These two sides rub against one another, always and forever, in everyday American life. That's his take on that. This tension has been with us across the nation in our COVID-19 response, and in some places it's been so divisive that it's led to violence and death threats. For public health, this year has been a constant balancing act, and we always break towards the communal and the value that no one should be left behind. And it's served us well so far. Marin County has had lower case rates than most other counties throughout this pandemic, and this is faint praise given the high case rates we've seen statewide. We've also worked to optimize freedoms, to open 80% of our schools, and kept businesses as open as we can. We stay resilient by treating this pandemic as a matter of community well-being as much as personal health. It's vital that we see the pandemic as a shared threat. With a communicable disease, an every man for himself approach brings us all down, because we sink or swim together, and if we neglect any community, we all suffer. Which brings us to our vaccine distribution plan. The new year is coinciding with a new phase of our pandemic response, really the most important pivot point we've seen. Vaccine distribution will last months, likely into the summer, and will ultimately lead us out of this pandemic. One of the most important features of our vaccine distribution plan is the way it prioritizes those who have been hardest hit and are most vulnerable. Think back to 2020 and the communities that have been most impacted. In a logical way, those are the communities being prioritized for vaccination. That's our healthcare workers, lower income communities, our essential workers, our older residents, those with medical conditions. Vaccine distribution will roll forward over the next 6 months at least. We estimate in 3 to 4 months it will be open season, when any and all who want to be vaccinated have access. And when at least 70 to 80% of us are vaccinated, that should allow us to resume some sense of normal life again as a community, which could happen as early as late summer or fall. For those who have to wait a few weeks for their turn, recognize it's probably because others are at higher risk. And by protecting those who are most vulnerable, we protect all of us. Our vaccine distribution plan is a chance to recognize the difference between privilege and vulnerability and to make room for everyone. Marin Vaccine Distribution Plan and the tiers and approximate timing is available on our website at coronavirus.marinhhs.org. All of it is subject to vaccine availability and what we receive as a county. Thank you for prioritizing community well-being. Get vaccinated when it's your turn and thank you in advance for doing your part to keep Marin resilient in 2021.